Hi and welcome back to The Winning Factor. I'm Alan Aitken, and on this show each week we take a look at some upcoming races in Hong Kong and try to isolate an angle of a race that might lead us to finding the winner. Well, we're back to square one. The season starts again on Sunday, September 7, and of course plenty of eyeballs around the world will be on the world's champion sprinter, Ka Ying Rising, as he makes his return to the racetrack. And as for everyone else, well, every trainer and jockey, they're back to zero. It's all to play for, but that doesn't mean that we don't have some patterns to work off. Now, every year at this time, there's a table that I like to bring out, and it's relevant for the first 2 months of the season. So let's take a look at that now. This table covers the Hong Kong trainers over the first 145 races of the season. Now, that number isn't an accident. I choose 145 races specifically because that usually takes us to the start of November. The leading trainers in that period tend to be the same names year after year, trainers who have a point in making their runners fit for the commencement of the new season. And the top 6 here will train around about 40% of those early 145 winners, so certainly worth looking at. I might add Mark Newnham to those names as well. He was a slow beginner in his debut year, but very much up to speed last season, and by the look of the way he's training lately, I think that's going to be more like his regular pattern. So this list is something that you might want to note down and come back to during the first couple of months of the season. Now, having said all that, I'm going to be contradicting myself a couple of times on this show for the first meeting, particularly later on with Jamie Richards, but also with John Sires. Now, John has a reputation as a slow starter for the racing season, and in most seasons that is true. But if you have a look over his career, every few years he bobs up and is very competitive in the first couple of months. And I think that's what we're going to see this time around. I think he's in line for a good day on Sunday, for example. So the first race we're going to take a look at for Sunday's meeting is race 5, and our winning factor here, the draw. So this is a competitive class 4, and I'm sure there'll be good arguments for Do Your Part. The Air finished last season with a good run. Bull Attitude didn't have much luck at his last start, and Lucky Man, Sight Dreamer, and even Gale Saga down in the weights with blinkers back on all have winning chances. So a tough race, but I'm looking particularly at 2 runners, Sight Dreamer from the Size yard and also Bull Attitude from the Mark Newnham yard. So let's have a look at what they've been doing. So this is back to last season, race 800, gate 12, green, white and orange colours, and Bull Attitude begins fast here, but he's not the only one, and his rider Luke Ferraris finds plenty of competition underneath and has to really burn his horse in the second section to get across. Now once he's there, you can see on the heat map, he is able to come back a little bit, but probably the damage has already been done. Now the winner, Spirit of Peace in green colours, has a soft run a few lengths back on the rail and rounds him up in the straight, while 2 from even further back arrive late to cut him out of the placings in the final stages. But full marks there for Bull Attitude, finishing 4th. I thought he did a really good job to hold on as well as he did, only capitulating fairly late in the race. He's a maiden, but he's not going to be a maiden for much longer. Now, breaking his maiden status last start was Sight Dreamer in Class 5, after he'd had 9 previous starts and pretty much all of them had an unlucky story. So he was able to break through at the final Sha Tin meeting last season. This is race 828. He's in gate 8, brown and white colours, and Sight Dreamer he's just average out of the gates, but his rider Andrea Atzeni works on him, looking to get a more prominent spot. Now the early pace here is quite good and everything goes to plan, but when the leader slows right up on the circle, Sight Dreamer briefly does want to get his head up and react to that. But a winning move here from Atzeni. He comes out a little bit early from his trail and lets Sight Dreamer flow into the race, and that was probably the difference. Sight Dreamer doesn't lose his rhythm. He sprints hard down the straight and defies any attempt to pass him, then finally comes away in the last bit. So that was Class 5, but I think we saw enough of Sight Dreamer being unlucky prior in Class 4 last season to know that he is definitely going to pay his way in this grade. So he comes up to Class 4. Bull Attitude stays in Class 4. A winnable race for them both on Sunday, but a critical difference in their barrier draws. On the map, he's now into Gate 3, Sight Dreamer, so he'll be looking again to trail the speed. While Bull Attitude, well, he's again out in no man's land in Barrier 9. I think Lyle Hewitson will be positive on him and perhaps hoping to get dragged across by other speed horses like Spangled Fortune and Do Your Part. And he'll be tough to beat if he does get into the right position. But One and Only also has pace near the inside, and the draw is just sticky enough to make it only 50-50 whether Bull Attitude gets over to the right run or whether he has to do some extra work once again. So the tip in race 5, Sight Dreamer. His winning factor, the draw. Up in class but down in the weights, Sight Dreamer is a horse who brings good enough form to win in this grade, and one of his main rivals has a bit of a problem at the barriers, and I think that might be just enough to give the nod to Sight Dreamer. The other race I want to take a look at for Sunday is race 9, where our winning factor is a change of pace. And while I think there will be arguments made in this Class 3 for a few other runners, the primary players for me are the lightly raced Jumbo Treasure from the Cody Moe yard and Bulb General from the Jamie Richards stable. First, let's have a look at Jumbo Treasure's latest effort. This is back to race 775 last season. He's in Gate 12, red, green and yellow colours, and Jumbo Treasure shows his usual brilliant gate speed. He's soon up sharing the lead, but Derek Lung does have to keep pushing him to finally get across and take the lead on his own. Now, on the heat map, we can see that early speed wasn't brutal, but was certainly solid enough through the first 800 metres, which meant he didn't get a rest, and that makes him vulnerable over the final stages. Straightening up, Jumbo Treasure has got away with a big break by now. He does get tired late, but not soon enough for his chasers, and it's a brave victory in the end. So that was Jumbo Treasure's second win from 6 starts, and I think there's quite a few more wins in store for that horse. He does a lot right. He's got good speed, good gate speed, and doesn't seem to make too many mistakes. Now at the bottom of the weights here we have Bulb General. Now this horse ran twice as a 3-year-old last season. He was particularly good on both occasions over 1200 metres with the wide draws and the pace against him. And he has the breeding to get at least a mile this season, and I think he could develop into a Derby aspirant as the season goes on. He's certainly got some quality about him, able to produce a big finish, and that's what we saw at his second race start when he was able to break his maiden status. This is race 834. He's in orange colours, gate 11 here, and Zach Purton begins okay on him, but lets the gelding find his own speed early, drifting back as the early pace is average, and then settling towards the rear as the pace drops out of the race in the middle stages. But once they turn into the stretch, he brings a brand of acceleration that these horses simply can't match. He has 132 pounds in the saddle. The horses ahead of him haven't really done a lot of work, so they should be full of energy, but he just drops on them and then runs away to win impressively. Now, the only horse on that day to run a faster final 400 metre sectional was in the following race, a Group 3, where the winner was Bundle Award, carrying only 116 pounds. So it's certainly good company to be keeping. And this was Bulb General returning after 5 months out after colic surgery. So there's every reason to think that he's even better than what we saw there. As I mentioned, the tempo was against him a little bit in that race and a lot against him in his debut race, but he still ran particularly well both times, and he gets a different race setup this weekend. Now, Jumbo Treasure has gate 1 this time, so it should be easier for him to find the front with the gate speed that he has. But the race also contains other pace, including Young Superstar and Wonder Star, both quick horses who have been at their very best by far when used up to get to the lead. So it looks competitive for the front. Whoever leads, it won't be a cakewalk. Now, we saw Jumbo Treasure had to earn his lead last time and still won, but he does have a bit more weight to carry this time and no less pressure. And after having the race shape against him in his Class 4 starts, Bulb General now gets a race shape that really favours his big finish. Now, all that looks well and good for Bulb General, but I did mention early that I would be contradicting myself regarding early season trainers on this show, and that's very much the case here. Since his arrival in Hong Kong in 2022, Jamie Richards has been the worst performing trainer over those first 2 months of the season. He also has a patchy sort of a record at Sha Tin. So a couple of negatives there for this horse. So I went looking for something to get a positive spin out of, and perhaps it's like they say a drunk uses a street light post more for support than illumination, that I've found one thing to be very positive about. And what I've found statistically is that this is a Class 4 winner going into Class 3, and Jamie Richards' record with winners up in class has been good. Now, I've only used the last 3 seasons here for all trainers, since that is as long as Richards has been at Sha Tin, and it's one sector where he has been more than competitive, figuring 4th on strike rate and ahead of market expectations as well. So the tip in race 9, Bulb General. His winning factor, a change of pace. Now, what he's done to date, Bulb General has done with the pace a little bit against him in both those starts, and I think that this time he'll have a pace which suits. Now, I did highlight that Jamie Richards hasn't been one to have his horses up and running early, but this horse is a potential Derby candidate. I think Jamie will be keen to get some wins on the board, get him up the handicaps if he's to become a player in those races in early 2026. So I think this horse won't be lacking in fitness, and he looks a highly promising horse. Well, that's it from the winning factor this week. Enjoy the first day's racing, enjoy the world's best sprinter. We'll see you next time.